Coming up on this weekend edition of the ICT Newscast, anchor Aliyah Chavez talks policy with Deputy Secretary Torres after her recent visit to the Tohono O'odham Nation in Arizona, and touches on a number of initiatives aimed at Indian country. Producer Shirley Snavy reflects on her own personal connection to Gary Fife, a well-known Native journalist in the wake of his passing. And ICT's Pacey Garcia introduces you to a new segment here at ICT centered around our most valued resource.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.
Support for the ICT Newscast with Aliyah Chavez comes from the Arizona PBS studios in Phoenix at the Walter Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communications at Arizona State University.
Amadawahopa. Thank you for joining us. I am Aliyah Chavez. Many of you see my face every weekday, bringing you news about Indigenous communities. I'd like to take a quick moment to tell you about my why. Sometimes the news here is about climate change, something all of us care about so deeply here at ICT, or sometimes it is about education, health, or the touching stories of returning our relatives home, the ones who were taken to federally run boarding schools long ago. One area of coverage that is important to me is policy and elections. I believe we, as journalists, should make Washington, D.C. and the affairs there more accessible to Native American communities, taking big policy ideas and distilling them down to the basics of what they are, who they affect, and finding out how Indigenous communities are impacted. A more informed Indian country is one that can make the best choices for itself, exercising sovereignty and Indigenous excellence. Deputy, welcome to the ICT Newscast.
Aliyah, thank you so much for having me.
You are fresh off of your visit with the Tohono O'odham Nation, and I want to hear all about it. And what I want to hear in particular is what folks had to say to you, especially those who live in rural communities, about the need for access to internet.
It was such a joy to visit Tohono O'odham, and specifically where we were. It was a drive out there from, being out west, it's not long, but 2 hours to get to a place where you see what it takes to truly reach Indian country when it comes to high-speed internet. Along the border in Tohono O'odham Nation, it's one of the largest Indian tribal nations in the country in terms of land covered. And so it takes a lot to get to every single connection that's out there. But because of the hard work and investments that are happening with the Tohono O'odham Utility Authority, and also with some really exciting partnerships with the Gila River Indian community as well, with their telecommunications authority. So being able to see what that work looks like on the ground, I was able to meet with the district chairwoman who was very eager to have to have high-speed internet connections to her home specifically, as well as to the entire community. Because the difference that it makes is clear, whether it's kids being able to do their homework at home instead of parked outside of a community center, or whether it's our elders being able to get the telehealth that they need in order to be able to stay healthy in the communities that they love.
I am from the Southwest, and my tribal nation of Santo Domingo Pueblo, I have a little funny story because at my grandpa's house in the village, there's one window, and all of my cousins, we all put our cell phone in the window, and we're all fighting to get the 1 bar of cell service. And now we have internet, and it is absolutely a game changer, as you just mentioned. For the Tohono O'odham Nation, can you tell us when this broadband project will be completed?
So it was a groundbreaking that we were visiting. About 60% of the project is already completed, and they are looking forward to the completion soon. Once it's done, over 400 households will be covered through this investment, over 100 farms, as well as small businesses, and 4 educational buildings or schools. So when you look at the impact that will have, it will be crucial. And if there ever is a pandemic or some other situation, the kids will be just so much better prepared. And that speaks to what it means to make sure that everyone has high-speed internet service. The Biden administration realizes that that's an investment in people, that's an investment in opportunity, and it's also an investment in rural places and in tribal nations to make sure that everyone has the opportunities to get ahead.
I'm so glad that you mentioned investments, because the Biden administration has made a number of investments in Indian country, including at the USDA. I saw that just last week there's a new investment for summer EBT programs to benefit children. Of those investments, there's been a lot. Which ones stand out to you the most?
Coming from rural development, before serving as Deputy Secretary, I was Undersecretary for Rural Development. And people don't always think that rural development should be in the Department of Agriculture, but it's recognizing that making sure that there's high-speed internet or clean water or wastewater, also investing in electricity is crucial part of our agricultural communities. So some of the things that I'm most excited about are the Inflation Reduction Act, for example, which are investments in rural created energy to make our energy more efficient, but also save costs, as well as be resilient and fight climate change. So there's real opportunity out there in terms of the building of infrastructure that's happening, and we want to make sure that tribal communities are ready to take advantage of those investments.
We know that the USDA has an Office on Tribal Relations, which is something that few other agencies have. Aside from that, though, what has the USDA done to advance racial justice inside the USDA?
I'll bring up two examples that I think are very important. The first is our work on Indigenous foods. When it comes to Indigenous foods and protecting that heritage, it's also about sometimes fighting climate change with drought resiliency. It's also about maintaining or building new markets through the foods that have been able to be preserved in culture. So investments in whether it's Indigenous animals and harvesting and processing, or whether it's helping make sure that tribal schools can serve Indigenous foods, there's a great opportunity here. And the Office of Tribal Relations has been crucial in helping us identify those places where we can invest at the Department of Agriculture. Another example is actually back in our high-speed internet space. We've had Reconnect for many years, but in the most recent rounds for the bipartisan infrastructure law, we made significant changes in how we invested in tribal communities. We got rid of the match requirement, because even if it's a grant, it can still cost money to receive it if you have to match with other funds. And that didn't always set tribal communities up for success. So for tribes, we removed that requirement. We also saw a problem with sometimes folks were building on tribal lands without sufficient permission to do so. And so we changed our grants to make sure that anyone who was providing high-speed internet service and receiving our funds had to receive support from the tribal sovereign government first.
I want to talk about goals, because we, of course, are at the beginning of 2024. Last year, ICT was closely following the legislation, the Farm Bill, because, of course, that had a ton of tribal provisions in it. But as you look forward to this year, what do you really hope that the USDA is accomplishing for Indian country?
You know, when you look at the Farm Bill, it really is a statement about priorities. And a lot of headway was made in the 2018 Farm Bill, as well as some of the work that's happened since, whether it's the Inflation Reduction Act and the dramatic investments in conservation in farming, as well as in some of that energy work that I was talking about. What we've also seen is a look at what our nutrition programs can do and should be doing. And when you look at SNAP, for example, it's the first time since the 70s that the Thrifty Food Plan, which is the formula that sets your nutrition, the amount that families receive for SNAP, that it was updated to reflect the cost of food. And so it's really important that that continue, because we know sometimes when food prices increase, families who are struggling should see that impact and be able to receive that additional support. So as we look towards the new Farm Bill, one, it's important to make sure that those families receive the assistance that they need, and also that we're continuing to get out those investments with the Inflation Reduction Act, and that those funds stay focused on conservation and energy resilience and the impact that they're having right now.
We know that the work and the leadership that you do at the USDA is very wide-ranging. So I want to give you the space to maybe talk about something I didn't ask you, or maybe something else that comes to mind that you really want to talk to Indian country about.
When it comes to the United States Department of Agriculture, there's incredible history, and there's a lot of work still yet to be done. That's why I'm proud that the Office of Tribal Relations that President Biden has set up is taking a look at our programs. And whether it's through the lens of the Farm Bill or whether it's through the lens of implementing Inflation Reduction Act, we are actively looking to how we can serve tribal nations and Indian communities in a different way, in a better way that reflects that partnership, that reflects that sovereign government to government relationship, and that's investing in people all across our country.
Well, Deputy, we thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you so much.
It's interesting how traditional Native cultures across the country have adapted in today's America. The role of LGBTQ individuals is an example of such change. The influence of Christianity has tribal individuals going back through documented histories to find the true story.
Two Indigenous queer artists are challenging the recorded history of the Grand Ronde and shedding light on the historical significance of being Two-Spirit within Indigenous communities. ICT producer Shirley Snavy has more.
Two Indigiqueer artists are challenging Grand Ronde history recorded by settler historians. They found accounts of a Two-Spirit woman documented by Grand Ronde tribal people. Anthony Hudson and Felix Furby curated an exhibit in their tribe's cultural center, the Chachalu Museum. My father's father's sister, our ancestor Shimkhin.
What does being Indigiqueer, what does being Two-Spirit, because that's a pan-Indigenous term, like what does Two-Spirit really mean for us, and what does it mean for us culturally? And in our research, we ultimately, zeroed in on this historical figure of Shimkhin, who is a Two-Spirit, for lack of a better word, essentially trans feminine, to use a contemporary term, healer and ancestor in our tribe in Grand Ronde.
And now the Shimkhin Project will tour Oregon with the support of SHIFT, a program of the Native Arts and Culture Foundation. The grant is responding to social, environmental, and economic justice issues in Native communities. Felix Furby says the exhibit is grounded in historical research.
The research for me started in a very personal place, trying to figure out what Indigiqueer and Two-Spirit meant for me in terms of a culturally relevant identity. There was history that wasn't that far under the surface, like it's in material that people have access to and know about. But the history about this ancestor was miscontextualized, and it took someone like me seeing the history in order to understand pretty quickly who she was. What I was interested in was showing that we also have these traditions, and we had a culturally specific role for being Two-Spirit and Indigiqueer here, and we don't have as much information as we would like for what that role should be. We have information that people existed, we have information that they were respected, and those are very important pieces.
Colonialism and Christianity really changed things for a lot of tribes and the way a lot of tribes see themselves, and the various roles that people can play in society. I have Lakota ancestry, and Two-Spirit people, Winkte is what the name that we call them, held a very special place in ceremonies and in a role in the community. And are you finding that in the Grand Ronde, the Confederated Tribes, Anthony?
Yeah, I think we're building that actively. We're rebuilding that back into our tribe. And I think taking this story and being able to show through these, literally, we went in and found through a lot of research on Felix's part, these ethno-linguistic texts where like settler linguists would come in like Melville Jacobs, and they would sit down and interview folks. And that's where this firsthand testimony of this ancestor of Shimkhin came from. She would even interact with settlers. She was respected by so many folks and was brought in. Like, this was the person that you called when stuff got really bad. This was a person that could come in, and she had multiple. We have tamanawas, which is spirit powers. That's our religion traditionally. And she had, at least through our research, we found that she had at least 4 different spirit powers. And all of those, one of them was the power to become woman, which was essentially an act of spiritual transitioning. You know, she performed a dance on Spirit Mountain, the sacred site, for 5 nights, for 5 years in sequence. And once she finished doing that, she had activated the power to become woman. Now our goal is to figure out, how do we build that back into our community, even if we're not doctors, even if we're not healers or doing deep spiritual work? How do we show up for our communities and make space? And I think what Felix and I are doing is our way of contributing and reasserting that role, is by holding these histories and presenting them to folks and saying, we're here, we're loved, we're always going to be with you. So let's work together.
Well, and really that interpretation through the years and through the generations has really changed. And so I applaud you for going back and looking at some of these original source data to be able to tell the story as it probably has never been told before.
Some of what we're trying to show is that gender doesn't necessarily translate well across cultures. And some of what we're dealing with now is the effect of intergenerational trauma from those enforced changes. And there's a guardedness about gender types of things that are, it effectively feels frightening or threatening sometimes to challenge these roles too much. And so I really am wanting to sort of carefully throw open the doors a little on some of these things and help and really help us kind of revitalize gender roles altogether as what makes sense for us in the present day, and understand how we are different, and how our ancestors were different, and that those differences are okay and often even needed.
Shirley Snavy, ICT News. I've had a long career in broadcast journalism, and one individual stands out. That's Gary Fife. I heard Gary's voice nearly every day for years before I met him. He was the host of First Person Radio and National Native News. Today, I celebrate his life and the lessons he taught me.
We turn our energy now to reflect on the life of a groundbreaking Native journalist whose impact on Indigenous media spans decades. Earlier this week, Muskogee Media reported that Gary Fife has died. Nicknamed the voice of Muskogee Nation Radio, I interviewed him in September of 2021 about his career. Take a look.
I hit college right at I feel the peak of the civil rights movement here in the United States, and watching all of the activities going on around the nation with different minority people stepping forward. And I personally was wondering, where is the Native American presence in this movement? I also felt, of course, that since we have a federal relationship that no one else has, ours would be different, our presence. So I wanted to be a part of that, and I felt making a positive move for Native American people in the presentation of our information. Now, up till then, many of the Native publications and other journalistic efforts were what I would call advocacy, which is fine, which is wonderful, and it's needed. But I was in school to learn journalism, and I kept feeling that we needed a balanced report on these particular issues and people. In other words, both sides of the story. So that's what got me involved as a writer and photographer, and in my own way, an advocate. Video used to be a lot of scenes where either it was the beautiful Native dancers at the powwow or it was the drunks. And I think you probably run across that in your life. But now we're seeing more of our own people step forward and take control of these stories and present them in a much more wonderful fashion. And that affects Native, the mainstream media too. They're paying attention. I've even seen Indian Country Today quoted as a source for a story that aired here locally. So, that's kind of wonderful. They're taking us seriously, and I think that future is really bright.
Gary Fife was the host for National Native News and First Person Radio. He was 73 years old.
Visiting with family and relatives will help us from feeling lonely or socially isolated. COVID-19 changed everything, like our ancestors who survived war, famine, and epidemics. Our elders had to make sacrifices too. The more we are socially connected with our family and community, the less health problems we will have and the longer we will live. We need to stay active to keep our spirits alive. Remember, you are not alone. Connected together, we will stand strong. For more information on elder isolation or caregiver resources, go to connectedindigenousElders.org.
Mike Nulak, Nuani Pacey Smith Garcia, Nuga Winuch. What you just heard was a greeting in the Ute language. Preserving languages is very important to many Native nations and here at ICT. To that end, we are bringing you a conversation with Michael Running Wolf, a Northern Cheyenne AI expert who is using the advanced technology to teach and preserve languages, and with ICT producer Stuart Huntington. After that, you'll hear a new segment called Language Breaks. These will bring you languages from all across Turtle Island. We're starting this week with Ojibwe from the Red Lake Nation. Thank you and goodbye in the Ute language are one and the same, the Goyak.
First Languages AI Reality, or FLAIR, is an initiative to create community-centered technology for language education for Indigenous, with the goal of language reclamation for languages in North America. Most languages in North America are endangered, in the United States particularly so. We have, with 70% of our languages, like probably within the next 5 to 10 years may go to sleep without significant change into how we're teaching these languages and how we're reintegrating these languages across the United States. And the goal is to create advanced technology for second language acquisition using artificial intelligence and virtual reality as our methodology. The languages in North America and the United States represent our way of thinking. Number one, these are our identities, how we conceptualize our interaction with each other as humans, and also with our interaction with our environment. For example, Nuchanuth, which is a language in the Northwest, they don't have their concept of a tree is the landholder. Who owns the land? It's the tree. And so when you think of it that way, conceptually, it doesn't make sense to chop down trees because you're killing the landowner, the landholder. And these views are represented best in our indigenous languages. Like, for example, in Cheyenne, my mother's tribe, we're not even allowed to stab the land. And so embedded within our language and our culture and our spirituality is this view that the environment is innately sacred and is more important than our individual lives. And so we have, as people, and this is true for other communities across the United States, have thrown ourselves to the protection of our land. I was there at the No DAPL pipeline protests in North Dakota, and amongst the many other tribes, and I was in tribal, and I think our land and our languages and our culture is so intertwined with our land that it's important. And that in itself is important, is worth protecting these and reclaiming these languages, but also from a scientific perspective, these languages are not researched very well, particularly by machine learning technology. And I believe that if we collectively as Indigenous peoples were to harness the knowledge embedded within our languages and the unique morphology and the unique scientific properties of our languages, we could actually advance the field of machine learning and artificial intelligence. We're not studying Indigenous languages simply because of history. The federal government had a very aggressive program of exterminating our culture. And as a result, Western society doesn't value Indigenous languages the way we, the people, do it. And I think it's necessary that we do the research, because only we can make sure that it's done ethically and responsibly. So right now we're working with 3 to 5 languages, and we're really working on solving some key foundational, basic technological challenges with working with combining AI and making AI work for indigenous languages. And it is unresearched. In 5 years, I'm hoping that we're able to scale to hundreds of languages, being able to work with solving technical challenges that will enable AI for hundreds of languages across North America, and beginning to start thinking about the other 7,000 languages across the world. There's 7,000 languages in the world, and we only probably have a couple of dozen that has AI built for them, the typical German, French, English, Cantonese. And if you're not one of those languages, you don't have AI for it. And I believe in 5 years, we could start beginning to enable this technology ethically across other communities.
Ganabachwi Minogishiga Noongam. Perhaps today will be a good day. Ganabachwi Minogishiga Noongam. The word Ganabach is talking about maybe or perhaps. We is a future tense. Mino, talking about something good. And Gishigad means day. And then our word Noongam is today. Putting it all together, Ganabachwi Minogishiga Noongam. Perhaps today will be a good day.
This program is made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, a private corporation funded by the American people.